I'm present.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Okay, we have a full board present.
Okay, so I'll just do a quick read of the public hearing and then we can hopefully wrap up this one portion. So in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a continuation of a public hearing on Tuesday, August 25th at 5:45 via Zoom Video Communications, Inc. to hear and act upon the application of John and Mary Robinson. The applicant seeks a variance to install a 12-foot by 16-foot shed at 48 Manor Road in Bolton's residential zoning district identified on Assessors Map 4C as parcel 15.A. The applicant seeks partial relief from the 20-foot side yard and rear yard setbacks pursuant to Section 250-13V of the Code of Town of Bolton. So with that, we can start the hearing. We had let's say, continuation from last month, and one of the items that we were waiting for was a document from one of the applicants' abutters. They had mentioned had favorable feedback about the location of the shed to be installed, and we didn't have that at that time. So I believe we did receive something. Is that correct, Erica? Oh, there it is in front of me. So
Yep.
So I believe that was the outstanding item left over from last time. So I don't have any additional comments from the last meeting. How about the rest of the board? Is the team, the board members satisfied with that document? People on mute.
Yeah, this is Brian. That's what we were waiting for, so I'm fine with that now.
Right.
Yes. Fine.
Hello, I'm on board with that. Brad.
Yep, I'm fine with it.
Okay. So if that's the case, I know Erica had distributed sort of a draft of a document that sort of outlined the procedural history and whatnot. If people are satisfied or comfortable with that, as well as no edits or changes, then we would just need to take a motion whether to accept or to deny the variance. So like just look at it.
Was a motion already made last meeting with just pending the letter?
No, there was no vote.
Right, because we don't want to make it contingent upon, so in case it didn't come in, so we would just need to sort of start a fresh motion.
So I guess I can motion to approve the, I guess I don't know exactly what would be pushing the
variance.
Yeah, the variance for the shed as per the plans and paperwork delivered. I don't know what else I need to.
Yeah, so it's basically, as you say, that we're in substantial conformity with the plan submitted. So sort of here in Eric is the bottom section of that. That's what, if that's your motion, it would be to grant the variance from the side yard and rear yard setbacks for placement of a 12 by 16 foot shed in substantial conformance with the plans,
Yeah, and here's that condition that the board typically states. So that's stated here.
Yeah.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the variance for the side yard and rear yard setbacks to place the 12 by 16 shed and it would be within substantial conformity of the with the documents provided. So, so we have that motion. All in favor? Or you have to do a roll call, right, Erica?
Yes, roll call.
Okay.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kistutz,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes,
Kay Stoner.
Yes,
I realize, Gerard, we also need a motion to close the hearing.
Okay.
I move that we close the hearing.
Second?
I will second that.
All right, thanks, Brad. Okay. Roll call then, Erica?
Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kistutz,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes,
and Kay Stoner.
Yes,
Okay, so the motion to grant the variance has been approved, and the motion to close the hearing has been approved. So Erica, you just let John know what the procedural, what the process is now, to finalize this decision document, and then the timing to get to the town clerk for filing.
That's correct. So John, I will coordinate with Gerard on finalizing this decision. He'll sign it on behalf of the board. And then I'll get it recorded with the town clerk's office. That all needs to be done within 14 days of this decision. So I'll likely get it done either this week or early next week, depending on Gerard's schedule as well. And then from there, that starts the 20-day appeal period, okay?
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
So good luck with the shed.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Goodbye now.
Bye-bye.
Ta-da! So 14 days plus 20 days.
Yeah. We're still in.
Oops.
Okay. Who's on this participation list? Let's see. Eric, we anticipate Joe Pesnola calling in or zooming in.
I believe so, yes. He should be participating tonight.
Mhm. We see some applicant up there. That's good. You know if anyone from Bosley Witten was going to come be on tonight, or was there?
No, I don't believe so. I didn't ask them to be present.
That's okay. So the report will stand on its own. Yeah. Maybe when we discuss that, we can just bring it up and highlight the the most recent items. Mhm. So let's see. Joe hasn't joined us yet. Eric, can the people here at the moment, the people that are on?
Who are the people participating right now?
Yeah, can they hear me? Because I just wanted to, or if you can put a note out that just says we're waiting on Joe Pesnola, and then we can.
Sure, I can write a chat message that says that.
Yeah, sure,
Sure.
thanks. Just so that people don't think we're stonewalling.
Yep, that makes sense.
Thank you.
What I'll do to Gerard is I will just send him a quick email.
Okay. So I'm turning up my phone because I don't know if that Andy sent a message if it's to me or is it to you that the volume seems low, but Erica, can you send an email to Joe just to confirm he's calling in? Or-
I did. I just sent him an email.
Okay, perfect. Because do we technically have, we don't have to hold it open for him, but right?
No, we could certainly get started. I anticipated his participation. He did write that letter today and submitted
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So I'm expecting him to participate, but I don't see any reason why we can't get started.
Yeah, so when we start, you can at least do the roll call and then I can read the notice and then, you know, we can get into the matter.
Sure. So I don't know that we need to do the roll call again. We did it at the beginning of the meeting, so we know that we have a full board present. So I think we could just begin with reading the notice.
Okay, so, you know, let me minimize this. So in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the, notice, the zoning board of appeals will hold a continuation of a public hearing via remote participation on Tuesday, August 25th at 6 p.m. to hear and act upon the application of the Woods at Farm Road LLC into Shenny's and Farrell PC. The applicant seeks a comprehensive permit for a proposed housing development entitled The Woods at Farm Road to be located in Bolton's residential zoning district at the corner of Farm in Berlin roads identified on Assessors Map 3C as parcel 72, approximately 2.47 acres. The proposed development consists of 4 single-family detached home ownership units. 3 of the units will be sold at market rate, and 1 of the units will be sold as affordable to those who earn 80% or less of the area median income, family income, to be counted on the town of Bolton's affordable housing inventory in accordance with General Law, Chapter 40B. Hearing items tonight, we anticipate will be the applicant's formal response to Horsley Witten's peer review letter, discussion of outstanding department comments, and that'll include the right-of-way property lines, stone facade matter, sugar maples, and the discussion of the waiver list, and then open it also for public comment. So with that, why don't we start with the applicant's response to Horsley Witten.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Douglas Duchesne, representing
Hello, Doug.
Willis Farm Road LLC. Good evening. It was my understanding at the last meeting we went over, I believe, the second letter from Horsley Witten, which pretty much presented that we had answered all the questions. I know there were a few minor things to be cleaned up. However, it is also my understanding, and I'll let Mr. Donahoe speak to this if I misspeak, but I do believe the board received a third and final letter from Horsley Witten stating that we had in fact satisfied all questions and outstanding requests, and that at that point the peer review was done. Is that fair representation, Seth?
Yes, it is. Seth Donahoe with Ducharme & Dillis. And we received a letter dated July 31st from Horsley Witten, and their conclusion is a statement that says we satisfactorily addressed their prior comments. So I don't believe a response to that was warranted.
Right, okay. And Erica, do you have that letter? Can you bring it up? I think, within the letter, if I recall reading it a couple times, well, they did believe a lot of the items, they had no new comments, whatever. I think there were some items in there where they would recommend that the ZBA consider certain language for waivers for conditions as we get further along the process when we're starting to look at a decision and documenting that. So I just wanted to sort of reinforce that. Well, I think they did at the end of the day note that they have met their inquiries. There are some items in there that we'll have to review as we look toward a decision. So any of the board members? Yep.
I was just going to say, can you see the Horsley Witten Group letter up on the screen?
Yep, I can now.
Okay.
So I think, as I said, I think their ultimate conclusion that Seth and Doug Duchesne mentioned was, they believe that they've satisfied the overall inquiries made by the peer review on behalf of the zoning board. And I was just highlighting that in the document, there will be some potential language in there for consideration for conditions as we move along down the process for a decision. Did any of the board members have any questions about the final letter or any comments?
I did not. This is Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
This is a question that basically doesn't relate to Horsley Witten, but I'm at some point we should discuss the letter from Concom. The points that were brought up, they were both brought up in March and now have been clarified a little more in this latest correspondence. So I think we should, we haven't spent a lot of time on that particular part of it, so I think we should probably at least go over that.
Yeah, those board comments are part of the agenda for tonight. So, but yes, thanks for at least chiming in on this part, and then we'll, after we sort of close the loop on this aspect of it, at least we'll know we're not either fielding new requests to them, or we've, closed the loop on the requests that have gone to them.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could respectfully request, if we're going to have people speaking, could they identify themselves and provide us with their name and address so that we know who's speaking? Because I have no way, I don't know who's speaking sometimes, so.
Okay, so sorry about that. The two speakers prior to myself were Brad Reed, who's one of the board members, and Brian Holmes, who is one of the board members. So we hadn't opened it up to the public comment. I was just fielding inquiries from the board members to see if they had any questions about the Horsley Witten letter.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. So we'll take that silence that there's no other board member comments. So Eric, you want to move on to the next agenda item?
Yes.
So, and I see in the participants, did Joe Pesnola join us?
He did.
Oh,
He
yeah.
did. Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
so,
Mr. Chairman, I'm on.
Oh, thanks, Joe. So did you have, I know you had written a letter to the board, so which is always helpful, your sort of analysis and sort of the layout and organization skills on that. So, but do you have any particular comments about the last Horsley and Witten letter that would be different from anything we just spoke about?
No, Mr. Chairman, I concur with you that it appears everything has been addressed by the applicant's team, and there are just a couple of issues that Horsley Witten recommends be memorialized in a condition or two, and I can work with Erica on that when we get to pointed drafting decision language.
Okay, great. Well, that helps us close that loop. And all right, so let's move on. So what is that? So then department comments. So Erica, there in the agenda, there's certain items there, the right-of-way, the stone facade, the sugar maple. So if you can organize the comments that we receive from departments around those categories, then we can bring those up and go through the comments. And
Sure.
Presume oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the right-of-way property line can be addressed fairly quickly. Ducharme Dillis had submitted revised plan sheets just recently, and so that should be on your screen now.
All right, so why don't we have Seth respond to those then?
Sure.
Sure.
If the board would like, there were only 3 minor revisions that we were requested to do, and I can run through those cohesively quickly for you.
Sure, take your time, Seth. Appreciate it.
So the sheet that Erica has up, that is our layout plan. And previously there was a request from DPW, and I believe it was echoed by the police department, that they would prefer to have the existing yield sign replaced with the stop sign. So at the top left of your screen, we're specifying a stop sign is to go in place there. There's also a detail for the installation of that on the same sheet. And then previously we had spoken about the possibility of adjusting the intersection of Berlin and Farm Road because it comes in at a less than perpendicular angle. And the existing roadway pavement is forced to meet that angle due to the abutters property lines to the north. You can see on the sheet, we've identified it as map 3C parcel 5, which is 168 Berlin Road. There's a plan of record for that, and it shows a projection in the vicinity of our proposed stop sign. And that's what's creating the curve in the road, farm road, and also preventing us from extending the pavement from Farm Road going to hit Berlin Road at a perpendicular angle. And the final thing we were asked to do was related to some tree specifications, and that's on the next sheet. There was some correspondence from the tree warden. Originally, there was a question if trees could be installed at the front of the property due to the presence of an existing overhead wire. So you can see the overhead wire on your screen. It's designated OHW. And we have staggered the trees with the input of the tree warden. And my understanding is he's approved the location of these trees. Those are sugar maples, and we were asked if we would install a specific variety, which is called Green Mountain, and we specified those on the plan as well. So in total, you'll have 6 sugar maples at the front of the property to preserve the existing streetscape. And that was it for changes that we've made to our plan sheet. So they're fairly limited. If the board has any questions on the specifics to those, I'd be happy to address them.
So Seth, are those are those annotated with AS, or what? Where are those shown on this current? Oh,
That's correct, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
okay.
They are noted as AS. There's a different variety of maples at the back of the property, which is a red maple.
Oh, there they are. Okay, down.
And those are the AR.
Perfect. Yep. Okay, Green Mountain. I see that. Thank you.
Gerard?
Yes, Erica.
I would just also add to my recommendation would be in the decision to condition the final location of those trees to be coordinated with the tree warden. You know, I did my best to coordinate with him in the exact locations he wanted them, but I think it's always helpful if he's just present at the time of installation, just to get the final location. So.
Okay. Good recommendation. Yeah, they probably materially won't change from there, but yes, if there's some reason that the specific spot on this plan isn't exact, then yeah, that'll help.
Yeah, I say that because in speaking with the tree warden, who's done plowing for the town in the past as well, he very much understands where they plow and they stockpile snow. So that was part of the reasoning for shifting some of the trees, even though it appears we shifted some of them closer to the overhead wire. He was sort of balancing the overhead wire with the snow storage locations in the right of way as well. He wants to give the trees the best optimal location, you know, to survive. So that was our discussion.
Okay. Does any of that sound unreasonable to the applicant as far as?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that, was that the extent of questions about the right-of-way, Erica, as far as board comments?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So that's good. I know there were some follow-up questions on the stone facade. I think one of our members, Andy Kitchich, raised a good question to Joe Pesnola. So Joe, do you want to talk about that point? And then if we had any other comments back from any of the boards over that, whether it be the design committee or anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I think generally where we are is either for the board to accept the offer to do no more than 2 of the houses in stone facade, 2 of the 3 market rate units, or just condition that none of the houses have stone facades in accordance with the recommendations of the design review board.
Okay, so the fact that 1 affordable and 1 market rate may not have the stone facade wouldn't materially go against sort of the guidelines that we're trying to uphold, is that the affordable unit should be indistinguishable from the exterior as far as the market rate homes?
No, in my opinion, if you had two with the stone facade being the two markets, and there was the affordable and the third unit having no stone facade, then you've met the blush test on the affordable not being distinguishable. If you only had one facade, then even more so. So I think that solution offered by the applicant is in keeping with the requirement. So again, I think it's up to the board whether or not to incorporate the recommendations of the design review board, which was to have none, or accept and condition the applicant's proposal.
Okay. Andy, any feedback on that as far as, I know you raised that nuance, which is a good question. So I want to be sure that you feel satisfied that you're getting the appropriate feedback so you can make your decision on that.
Yes, I brought up the question, and I'm fine with the proposal based on Joe's input.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thanks. So, Erica, there was no new information from Design Review Board, right? What they've stated stands as it stands currently.
Correct. I did not go back to them with asking for additional comments. No.
Okay, fine. So that third item that's listed there, the sugar maples along the intersection, is that already covered by what Seth just spoke about?
That is correct.
Okay. So that would sort of close out those items. Now, on the department comments, the rest of the department comments, will we handle those under the waiver list? Is that where they appropriately fall?
Correct.
Okay. So you want to so we want to bring up the most recent waiver list, and then maybe we'll go one section at a time based on the department comments you have?
Sure. Okay, so this is the waiver list that Mr. Duchesne had submitted in July.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that would be inclusive of anything so far based on different design changes or plans that have been updated and whatnot?
That is correct. The only thing, I was reviewing this today, and the one thing that we may want to ask the applicant to update is under the zoning. I think at the last hearing date, we had clarified the setbacks for each of units 3 and 4 to the front yard property line. So we may want to update that.
Okay. But it's at least substantially, I want to be sure that the list is currently the list that we should be looking at. There's nothing, the applicant hasn't added, or because they've made changes, they don't have to add something or take something away.
That is my understanding. Mr. Duchesne can verify, but that's my understanding.
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, when we last spoke, I believe at the last meeting about waivers, we had in fact made 3 changes to the waiver list. And we went over those in detail, but I'll run through them because they are very short. Under our wetlands requests, we added the language and associated regulations because the Bolton Wetlands bylaw has both a bylaw section and regulations. So we wanted to make sure that we were just comprehensive in our request, that it applied to the regulations as well. On the next page, we added a request to remove, you'll recall we had discussed removing those two buildings, the Sugar Shack and the cellar.
Mhm.
And we went through that in a lot of detail, and we provided a plan as to how we were going to do that. But at the end of the day, it turned out that we would have to do work within the 25-foot buffer zone. And then we were proposing to actually remove invasives, remove the buildings, and then to replant some of that 25-foot buffer zone. So we added that request for the waiver to allow
Yep.
for removal of those structures and improvements to the buffer zone. And then the final change that we made was with respect to the dimensional regulations that Erica had mentioned before. We found it necessary that units 3 and 4 needed to be pushed forward closer to the road. Your bylaw requires 50-foot front yard setback, and we've requested to be able to push up to 41 feet. And that was due to septic locations, and quite frankly, if we move those houses back, we're going to push everything back closer to the wetlands, which has been, we've been trying to keep things as far away as we can. And as we'll discuss, the Conservation Commission still wants us to pull everything out. We certainly couldn't do, we would be making things worse if we pushed the houses back. However, the question of whether we even need that waiver came about because we have a lot, and recall, we are one lot. We have frontage on 2 streets. So if the bylaw requires us to have a 50-foot setback from both streets, well, then we need this waiver for those 2 units only as they apply to the one road. If this board concludes that the bylaw doesn't require 2 front yards, then units 3 and 4, that would be considered a side yard, and we would be meeting your requirement. So that's why it said, should it be determined that the front yard setback applies to both roads on our lot, because we're a lot that faces 2 streets. And it wasn't clear to us what the zoning bylaw, how that was handled in the town of Bolton. So again, to try and make it clearer, if your bylaw does not require front yard setbacks when you front on 2 roads, then we meet the setbacks, because one would be the front setback, one would be a side, we meet it. If, however, you conclude that we need to meet the front setback on both roads, then we will need this waiver for units 3 and 4. And those were the only changes made to the waiver list from the very first list submitted way back when.
Yeah, okay, well, the reason because when I was looking at this again was from July, and we've had new documents submitted and new plans. So just for me, it was a good recap to say, okay, this is as it stands what we're looking at for waivers. So thanks for you may have spent a little extra time that some people may not think was necessary, but I think it was a good summary to bring us back up to speed on the document. Appreciate it. Okay, Erica, so you want to bring up the board comments relative to the first, we might as well go in order on this waiver list there.
Sure. Actually, it may be easier to start with Board of Health, since Board of Selectmen and Conservation Commission are related.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so here's the letter received from the Board of Health on August 20th.
Right. Okay. Right. So they're indicating because of the location within 72 feet for the wetlands that they're recommending a nitrogen reduction treatment proposal, but and then final documentation of the ownership details.
Mr.
Is
Chairman,
there
if I
any
could, I think I can
Sure.
answer this one very quickly.
Good.
The board, obviously, the planning board has a concern about our reduction in the distance from the wetlands of 72 feet, which requires a waiver from the local regulations. I will remind the board that we do meet DEP regulations. However, we are willing to and have proposed use of nitrogen reduction for the septic system, and therefore we're willing to agree to the board's treatment request relative to this waiver. So we are providing nitrogen reduction.
And so that, so they're talk about the final ownership docs. Well, they're required for a DEP legal review. Are those docs that we would have available to the board prior to the construction, or how?
No, those documents would be provided to the Board of Health when we go in for the permits for the septic system. So we will have to generate those and provide them to the Board of Health. That'll all be addressed with the Board of Health filings.
Okay.
And I'll remind you, we are required to meet DEP requirements with respect to sewage disposal and water supply.
Right.
Gerard,
Yep. Erica, go ahead.
I guess my question relating to Board of Health comments would be, does the applicant anticipate updating the site plans to show the design for the nitrogen reduction treatment?
Seth, do they not already?
Yeah, so sheet C 3.1, I believe, it's the utility sheet. And there's a nitrogen loading calculation as well as specifications for the system on there. This development is using a single septic tank, and that septic tank will be equipped with the nitrogen reduction unit within it. And that's as allowed by the state approval and something that's typically done and allowed by the Bolton Board of Health as well.
Okay, so is that a fast system, or are we talking about something else?
It's shown as a fast system.
Okay, so in the past, I thought that the plans were, so does it call, so on the plans currently, it indicates a fast system?
It does, yes.
Okay, let me pull those plans up. I apologize, I missed that.
You said sheet C31, Erica.
Okay, I see that here, microfast. Septic tank, dual compartment septic tank with microfast 1.5.
Is that what you're referring to, Seth?
That's correct.
Okay. So this being, an area way over my head, is it just because it's a microfast system, does that infer that it's nitrogen loading to satisfy, or is there some language that needs to be noted somewhere in the document?
So the state actually certifies these systems to provide a level of nitrogen removal beyond what is normally done. This particular system has what's called a general certification, which means that it can be used across the board in communities that allow it, and Bolton is one of those communities that would allow it.
Okay. So, Erica, is that section that talks about nitrogen treatment notes, is that satisfy what you're talking about or thinking about?
Yeah, so the FAST system is typical. That's what I am aware of when we talk about nitrogen pretreatment.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right. That's good. So we can, looks like we can knock off addressing those comments. And
Okay,
now,
so
again,
then, if you'd like, I can open the Board of Selectmen comments from their meeting last
Sure.
week.
Yep.
And then we can move on to conservation.
Yeah. So if I recall, they were somewhat broad or generic, but if you were there, maybe you can speak to them a little bit.
So I apologize. These are the draft meeting minutes from Board of Selectmen from their meeting on Thursday. I was present for this discussion. Okay, so here it is here. The Woods at Farm Road. You can read that section of it, but essentially the board was most concerned with the number of waivers being sought from the local wetland bylaw. I did confirm with them that they still have to meet the state's Wetland Protection Act, and they still have to file with the local conservation commission through a notice of intent filing. So they understand that, but again, they were concerned with the number of waivers being sought.
So other than the number, there was no particular comment as far as a particular waiver. With regard to the sewage disposal system and well, which is shared concerns, do you have any idea what concerns were shared?
Again, I think it's the proximity of the system and the well to the wetland resource areas. All of their comments stemmed from the wetlands. So
okay.
I know one of the members was concerned that unit 1 and then sort of, the removal of the existing structures, all of that within the proximity of the wetland area. They thought that was relatively close. And so that, they had concern for that.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so that is Board of Selectmen, and now I'll call up Conservation, which is more specific.
Mm-hmm.
These are the comments from the Conservation Commission. Rebecca Longvall, their administrator, reiterated the comments from March, which they said still stand. And then we just recently received these new comments.
Right. So do those line up with the actual list of waivers, or are those just in general?
I think, I don't know that they necessarily line up, but they certainly relate to them. And I think we can certainly just walk through them one by one.
Yeah.
My apologies. I'm just trying to zoom in a little more. There we go. Okay. So their first comment has to do with the restoration mitigation of the invasive species management plan. I believe this was submitted at the last hearing.
Right.
So I can forward this to Rebecca so that she has it. So I think that comment has been responded to in a roundabout way. I just need to get them the information.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, that was also reviewed by Horsley Witten,
Correct.
part of their peer review. So this proposed removal of the buildings and the proposed mitigation and invasive species management plan has been on the table a while. It's been reviewed by your peer reviewer. Everything was changed as requested, the plans show it, and now on, the day of the meeting, we get this comment.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm certainly appreciative of the fact that we do often get comments the day we're meeting, so we don't always have ample time to review them, but.
No, I understand that, but my point is this mitigation.
But I understand your point too, is that.
Been on the table a long time and was reviewed by your peer reviewers.
Yep, I get that, thanks. Yeah. So,
And it will be part of our conservation filing.
right, right.
So the Conservation Commission is going to get a chance to review it then again.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Gerard, I will take responsibility for that. I apologize. I don't think I don't think I sent it to them. So they probably didn't know that it existed, to be honest with you. So, but again, I think that comment's been addressed, so I don't see it being an issue.
Okay. So let's move on. Let's see.
So I think this next bulleted item has been discussed in the BAS. Provide alternative analysis. I believe this was even a comment of Horsley Witten related to the impact exemptions needed relative to reducing the number of impervious surfaces and area of disturbance through reducing the number of structures, but attaining the same number of livable units. And the applicant was not agreeable to this. So I think this comment as well has been vetted, and we can sort of move on from that.
Right, because as currently designed and as proposed by Evan, they're looking at the 4 individual units, 3 market, 1 affordable. So, and let's say with the work that's done to them moving it around to get as optimal location as they presently have provided. Okay. All right. So then you want to move on to the next ones regarding referencing bylaws directly?
Yeah, so I think this is probably the most pertinent comment that they made. I think they'd like to see direct reference to the bylaw and the regulations for all of the waivers that they're seeking. So they say reference the bylaw directly, for example, when asking for buffer zone exemptions. It is unclear whether an inquiry for an exemption from the buffer zone under the Wetlands Protection Act or the adjacent upland resource area of our local bylaw. So I think this is a very legitimate comment. To know it should be the latter, as it would be counterintuitive for the board to approve a waiver for the Wetlands Protection Act, considering the project will still be required to be reviewed and go through the permitting process with the Conservation Commission specific to the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think they're just looking for specificity here in the waivers list, so that it's clear that, we're talking about the aura and not just a 100-foot buffer.
Right.
And the 25-foot notice.
If I may respond to that.
Certainly.
I quite frankly don't necessarily understand this question. If you'll look at our waiver list under wetlands bylaw, we cite the chapter and we write exceptions are requested from the Bolton Wetlands Bylaw, section 233-2 and its associated regulations to allow for alterations within the upland. And then we specifically provide the requested waiver. There is nothing in here to indicate or imply that we are seeking any waivers from the Wetlands Protection Act. As I'm sure the board is aware, and I'm surprised your Conservation Commission isn't aware, we cannot seek waivers from the Wetland Protection Act through your board, through the Conservation Commission, or even DEP. We have to meet the regulations under the Wetland Protection Act. These waivers or exemptions that we're requesting are only to your local bylaw, as we have suggested in the very waiver request. Bolton Wetlands Bylaw, section 233-2 and associated regulations. What more detail or what more can I provide that will indicate that we're not seeking from the Wetland Protection Act? We're not allowed to do that. I really do. I mean,
That
is there a
clarification is fine.
subsection or anything else that we're missing here?
Hello, this is Brad Reed. I just have a comment. We have a 100-foot buffer zone for a reason in this town. We have no sewerage that's public, and we have no water supply that is public. Therefore, this town is under a lot of pressure. So if this system fails, who's responsible?
I understand that, sir, but I'm being questioned as to whether or not we're seeking waivers from the Wetlands Protection Act, which clearly we're not, and I'm being told that I didn't ask with enough specificity that we were seeking waivers from the Bolton wetland bylaws only. So I'm just trying to understand what it is they want us to provide.
Obviously, they want you to provide a clarification between the Bolton laws and the state laws.
Well, but they're, right, but they are, the waiver, the exception of the waiver they're requesting does deal with the Bolton, as I said, wetlands bylaw, section 233-2. And they do say under associated regulations. Erica, is the associated regulations broad? Is that what the board is, is asking about, or is it? It seems, I don't know if that's what their issue is or not.
They could be referencing the bylaw or the regulation. I think they're asking the applicant to clarify. Let me go back to their comments. Okay, so they specifically say bylaw in the comment.
Yeah.
So Gerard, do you mind if I ask a question? Because I think I'm getting confused. Okay, thank you. So I guess my question to the applicant would be, we have other projects in town that get permitted under our local wetland bylaw, and they do work within the Aura area. So I'm trying to understand why for this project, the applicant needs to seek these waivers. I guess that's my question. What specifically requires them to seek these waivers?
Attorney DeShanes, can I address that? So the waivers to the local wetlands bylaw are something that's granted through the conservation process, and that's through filing a notice of intent. And as the board's aware that the comprehensive permit, its intent is to essentially act as one permit for the project and cover all of the local bylaws. And so that's why we're asking for those specific setbacks as part of this application.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So in a typical process, it would be the Conservation Commission that the applicant would be seeking those waivers from?
Right.
Okay.
But looking at their comment again, versus unclear whether inquiry is exempt from buffer zone under wetland protection for adjacent upland resource area by our town local bylaw. They're looking specifically at the bylaw, not the Wetlands Protection Act, correct? Right, I think it's just the term DeShanes said. So, so you could probably document that back to them, to the Concom.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to send them an answer to this question. And in fact, it will answer this question and the next one. And that is by saying that we are seeking no waivers from the Wetland Protection Act in any way, shape, or form. And the only waivers we're seeking are from the local bylaw. I'm happy to respond to that in writing.
All right, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Eric, you want to move on to the next one? Let's see.
Okay. So the next comment would be describe how the well would be maintained going forward. Is there a path proposed or area proposed to be mowed around it for access? Limited work for this purpose should also be included.
Well, if I could, Mr. Chairman, our proposed well location is in an area of, and Seth, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in an area that's currently maintained grassed area. We are proposing that the well will continue to be located in or the well will be put in the grassed area, and that we will just continue to maintain the grassed area around it. Access is going to be pretty easy over the grassed area. And quite frankly, we're not suggesting that we'll do anything any different than other homes in town that have a well that's, popped out in the corner of their lawn, and the access port will be there and we'll have easy access to it. And I believe we've actually shown the location of the well outside the 50-foot buffer zone. And so again, perhaps in my written response to the other question, I'll include that as well, but just so that the board knows, yes, we will be mowing around the well because this is proposed to be grassed lawn area in any event, and therefore we'll have the access to it.
I think what they're asking is how is a well rig going to get in there to do maintenance? I guess, is there access for a truck or other vehicle to be able to move in there and maintain the well?
Seth, in the event of an emergency, how do we get in there?
So the minimum spacing between any of the units is 20 feet, and a couple of units, it's quite more than that. For the likelihood of a well rig needing to get down there after construction is very slim, but it is feasible. Any other equipment, or whether it's a skid steer or even a pickup truck, could access that area if it had to.
Well, it might be nice to delineate the path so there's no doubts.
Because if they had to get in there, they would be going over, if you're saying in between people's yards, even though I guess it's a condo development, is there any chance that they would damage to get into there, the surface and things like that? So, and maybe to that point, is there a preferred way to get in that should be located?
Yeah, well, I think, when people start moving into things, they move furniture and lawn furniture, or maybe a shed, maybe something else that will block the way. That's just why I'm asking.
Mm-hmm.
Seth, we could add a couple dotted lines to a plan showing a potential access point to the well. Say
Absolutely.
That would be fine.
between units 1 and 2.
And if I could remind the board too, as this was reviewed by the fire department, one of their requests was that we keep a 20-foot minimum clear path to the south of unit 1. So there's always going to be a clear path to get around that unit. And we'll designate a secondary access for the well area as you've requested.
Okay, so that would be helpful. Okay. So it looks like the next item would be the town should rely on the setback as is and not a waiver. Okay. But that would require re-engineering the whole project, right? how about that next question about the land recovering from being a dump in the past? I'm not aware of this property or the history of it. So anyone have any feedback on that item?
Mr. Chairman, we are not aware of anything. There has been nothing raised in any of our investigations. There's been nothing raised by any of the Board of Health or anyone else. And quite frankly, we have to build this site in a way that will require, erosion control mechanisms throughout the site. And I don't suspect that we're going to have soils eroding from the site into the wetlands. Both our plans show erosion control, as do I'm sure any permits we get from the Conservation Commission are also going to call for erosion control, but there is no documentation available relative to this point that we're aware of. No, sir, with all due respect, do we think we need to go hunting this down and figuring this out? I have no idea where this comment came from.
Yeah, neither do I, but
but that is
okay, thank you. And then the last item, Erica, deals with the increased traffic.
That is correct.
So the benefit for the developers is designed a way to emphasize and naturally delineate the boundaries of the wetlands and address concerns of traffic that may be a beneficial location. Can you speak to that a little bit, Erica?
I don't know how much clarification I can provide to the board. I haven't talked to Rebecca specifically about this comment. I mean, perhaps we can, I'm not exactly sure how they're correlating the natural delineation of the boundary of the wetland with traffic, but perhaps the applicant could at least speak to how the boundary of the wetlands will be preserved or identified for the homeowners. How will they be able to distinguish that? Maybe that is a good question to ask.
Well, it's certainly not unusual when we are before conservation commissions permitting projects that require work within a buffer zone, and especially if that the disturbed area, the development area, is ultimately going to become lawn area. We are asked many times by conservation commissions, how are the people going to know where their back lawn ends and where does the buffer zone begin or where does the wetland begin? And I fully expect that we will vet that question with the Conservation Commission when we're with them. But what I will provide to the board is that our usual resolution of that is that we will agree to provide posts with a placard on them that say, wetland boundary or wetland buffer, do not disturb. And you just place those posts with the little placard on them at reasonable intervals, every 100 feet along an area where you have a concern about a neighbor, about a resident, expanding the backyard or perhaps dropping lawn clippings or something in that area. Now, that won't be an issue here, in that we'll have landscape company doing that, and they will be provided notice not to dump their clippings anywhere that they're not supposed to. So I can say that we will address this with the Conservation Commission, and I'm sure we'll be able to reach a reasonable solution with them in terms of signage and posting. And that, to me, and this is based on many, many years of work, not only working with Conservation Commissions, but being on the Conservation Commission, we usually address this either with a post with a little sign, or in some instances, the Conservation Commission prefers that we maybe place strategic boulders along, the wetland or along the, at certain points to delineate that area. So again, sir, I am confident that we will provide something satisfactory to your commission when we're with them getting our order of conditions. But I really do believe that's the place to address that. And so my answer to the commission would be that we're willing to work with them to provide some kind of natural delineation at the boundaries, and we'll do so when we meet with them on the order of conditions.
Okay.
I don't know what your commission prefers, so.
They typically have signage.
Signage,
Yep.
so,
Mhm.
yep.
Okay.
We'll definitely work with them in providing that.
All right. Thank you. Is that the extent of those, the commission's comments, Erica?
That is correct.
Yeah, so, and to just to Attorney Duchesne's last point, it seemed like in those March comments, that was areas that they were requesting potentially boulders or some type of signage and things, so that's good. So do we have any, what would be the next set of comments?
I believe that's it. It was Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, and Conservation Commission.
Okay, so could you bring up the waiver list again?
Sure.
Just so we can see which ones we sort of covered in general, and then, so the first waiver is under that groundwater protection, would be to allow for the construction within the 4 single families, correct?
Correct. Although single family homes are exempt from that bylaw requirement. However, I think just to be safe, the applicants requesting that waiver in case the Board of Health considers the single family homes to be something other than single family homes. So that one is a typical waiver that we see from 40B developers.
Okay.
And
So
Mr.
then we,
if I
yes,
could
go ahead.
If I could add, the groundwater protection, although we're seeking a waiver from that local regulation, if in fact the board doesn't think we're, single family structures because we're really poor, the town can be comfortable knowing that the groundwater protection was a big part of our filing with Horsley Witten in terms of our stormwater management and groundwater protection, and Horsley did a full peer review of that. And so I think the board can be comfortable that we have in fact met standards for groundwater protection. Seth, is that not true? Can you add to that, or?
Sorry, Doug, I lost my connection for a moment. The groundwater protection, as Erica said, is something that's been typically added to the 40Bs, and that's something just in case it was determined to be more than a single family home.
Okay. So then we went through the wetlands bylaw questions. Want to flip down, Erica? And then the Board of Health, we went through that item, correct?
Correct.
And then, so the zoning ones are the sort of the last ones that we haven't had any input on. Let's see, so the first item that's standard would be an exemption because it's multiple single-family structures on the lot. The dimensional setback we've already talked about. On driveways and parking ways, 2 shared driveways on 1 lot that would be necessary to for the access points that they have here. And then the scenic road one, that is the without having to go to the planning board separately. My understanding, that's why it's been encompassed in here, so that the board would act on that, that waiver, correct? Attorney DeShanies?
Yes, that's correct. Again, comprehensive permit is a one-stop shopping. And so we want to subsume the planning board permit for working on a scenic road. We want to build it right into this, application. And as we've shown on our application and on our plans, we have shown what we'll need to do for tree removal. And we probably spent more time on the trees we would be adding. So yes, that's why this is in here, is so that the comprehensive permit can act as a comprehensive permit for all purposes.
Okay.
Gerard, do you mind if
So,
I have 2 comments related to the zoning?
No, I was going to ask either yourself or if any of the board members have any comments or observations. So go ahead.
Okay, so the first one was the comment I made earlier, just for the front yard setback for lots 3 and 4. Correct me if I'm wrong, Seth, but I thought 41 feet was for one of the units, and then the other unit was a different dimension. So I would just ask, if that's the case, that particular waiver be updated to show both offset dimensions. And then my next comment would be related to scenic roads. And it's more just for the board's benefit that, yes, they could seek a waiver from scenic road, but that does not prevent them from having to go through a shaded tree hearing with the tree warden, which is it's either a federal or state law. I think it's a state law requirement. If they, in fact, plan to take any trees down within the road right of way.
If I could just address the comment regarding the setback issue.
Sure.
Sheet C 3.0, which is or 2.0, excuse me, which is the layout plan, that has the dimensions of all the units to the right of way. So we did request 41 feet, and unit 4 is actually 42.9 feet from the right of way. So yes, we can specify the 2 of them, but we're not talking about a massive difference in distance here. But I appreciate the need for clarity on that.
Great. Thanks.
And Mr. Chairman, I have one question when I could.
Certainly. Go ahead.
The request for again, and I know this is somewhat confusing, the request for that setback, those 2 setbacks that we've just discussed, the 41 and the 42.9. Again, whether or not we need those waivers is dependent on a determination by your board whether front yard setbacks are required on both roads when you have a lot like this, which fronts on 2 roads. Because if it isn't a requirement that you have 2 front yards, then as you can see, units 1, 2, 3, and 4 would all meet the front setback as to Berlin Road, and then they would meet the side yard setback as to Farm Road. So again, I guess we're looking for the board, the board to make a determination of whether there's a requirement for 2 front yards on a corner lot or not. Because if there isn't, then we don't need this waiver.
So Brad, do you know, because of the 2 driveway entrances on separate roads, does that factor into needing the frontage on both roads from your history and the boards?
Yeah, it's been a long time, so I'm not exactly sure. I think typically, the frontage was determined by what address the house had, but that's just my recollection. So I can't swear to that. But, if you've got frontage on, let's say it's number 66 Farm Road, then that would take its frontage off of the Farm Road versus Berlin Road. So that's my recollection. But the planning board should have some records of that.
Okay.
I don't know where.
Gerard,
you
I
meant-
can provide clarification if you'd like.
Yep.
So frontage and front yard setback are two different things. So Brad is correct. You can, if you have frontage along two different public roads, you can select which frontage to use in terms of your zoning requirements. However, when you talk about front yard setback, it's very clear in the definition of front yard in our zoning bylaw, and I've pulled it up for the board's review. So here you'll see yard front, and it says specifically a yard extending between lot sidelines across the front of a lot adjacent to each street the lot adjoins. And I confirmed this with our building inspector as well, who's our zoning enforcement officer, and he's in agreement with this interpretation.
So
The only problem I see is it's one lot with 4 houses on it. Typically, when we were planning board, you had a lot with a house on it. So I'm not sure how that falls.
Well, accepting the building inspector's review, then we would require that waiver for those two houses. So the request would stand. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to take the most conservative approach and leave it in.
Yeah.
I think it's also mitigated by the fact that the distance to the road is much further than the actual setback itself. That we discussed that in the past.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pete. Okay, so I think we went through pretty robust the waiver list at this point. I think we have an understanding of what's being asked and the comments we've had, feedback so far. So what we haven't had is any public feedback, Erica. So is there any public comment on the waiver list or any other questions that have come up while we've been having the boards and applicant discussions?
I have not received anything in writing from the abutters since the last hearing date. And I am looking at the list of participants now for tonight's hearing, and I actually do not see any of the abutters that have been providing comment previously in attendance. I do see Martha Remington is present, but she hasn't raised her hand or provided comment on the chat. So I'm not sure whether or not, she's seeking to provide comment tonight. Okay.
So one thing I'd like to do is have Joe Pesnola, our peer review, or help on our advisor, put together a good letter summary of where we are to date and sort of some of the next steps going forward. And one of the things Joe is good in highlighting is, we have 180 days to reach a decision or a conclusion on the project, and that's mandated through the statutes there. So that 180 day puts us at October 5th for when we have to have a decision made on this, or close the hearing done on this application. So that's 41 days from today. So maybe Joe could go, summarize some of the key points that he made in his letter, and then also talk about some of the next steps that he perceives that will help us move along to meet that deadline.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. What I tried to do in the letter was to, outline, kind of the segments of the process that we've gone through. We've talked about peer review, and the peer review seems to be put to bed. And as I said, we can work with Erica to make sure that the couple of comments that they recommended be memorialized as conditions get into any decision the board makes. With regards to town departments, staffs, boards, and commissions, I think you've gone through that. There may fall out from that a couple of items. The applicant talked about maybe providing a response to the commission's letter that came in today. But I think the Board of Health comments are satisfied, and the rest seem to be commentary for the board's consideration in your deliberations. I think the next steps would be to begin to instruct Erica to begin a possibly a draft that works to move some of these items into the forms of conditions. That's if the board is inclined to move towards a decision that would, possibly be an approval with conditions. I think what's important for the board to do at this juncture is talk about conditions that maybe aren't that haven't been talked about to date, and also begin to talk about the waivers and whether or not any of the waivers would cause an issue for the board members. I think it's only fair to have that dialogue within the confines of the open public meeting for the applicant to respond, because essentially the denial of a waiver sometimes can make an approval with conditions, and denial of a waiver tantamount to a denial and ripe for appeal. So I think if board members feel that a waiver in particular that would materially impact the project and lead to
see if he can
a situation, then I think that again should be discussed in the public forum for the applicant to be able to respond and defend and so forth. So I think the best way to go about that would be to formulate a draft decision with conditions, and for the board to hopefully at the next meeting to walk through that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pesnola, if I could, I can appreciate your statements with regard to the waivers and how denying waivers, even in an approval, can paramount to a denial. I also understand and appreciate and definitely appreciate the opportunity, should the board decide not to grant a waiver, to at least have an opportunity to present why that would make the project uneconomic. But I think in order for that to happen, what we really need to do is have the board walk through the waivers as we just did, and we've now talked about the waivers, we've explained the need for the waivers, we've addressed the various commentary from the boards relative to the waivers. And I guess I would just respectfully ask why we can't actually begin to vote the waivers one at a time.
Certainly, the board it's the board's pleasure to pretty much do whatever they feel comfortable with. Certainly, the going from openly discussing the waivers to straw polling to actually voting. I mean, it's the vote, whether it's a straw poll or an actual vote, isn't necessarily binding until the board votes on the entire comprehensive permit with the waivers there. So certainly we can identify the waivers that would be major impact. That would be probably the septic system setback to the wetlands, and generally the work within the abutting upland resource area, the aura. So it's the board's pleasure, but certainly deliberation doesn't have to take any form. It doesn't have to happen before or after the closing of a public hearing. It's the board's pleasure.
So Joe, on that topic, so we went through the waivers We had some feedback from some of the board members on the different sections. So the waivers, like for example, you say like the work done within an area, where the waiver, the request from the board would be, keep it outside the area. But if they're looking for a waiver, there's also been some mitigation or some conditions that have been proposed. So that, for me, normally we would get to that point where we have that draft of so the outline of the document and conditions, so that if you're looking at a waiver and say, that waiver is acceptable because it's sort of couched a little bit with this condition, and that's why we're accepting it versus denying it. You know what I mean? So
certainly, what might help Erica, and I'm certainly willing to help Erica with the formulation of this, would be for the board to charge Erica to set off and begin that. And any good decision comes with a series of findings of fact. And the findings of fact are the intent is to support the decision. So,
because I like to go through the all the documents that we have now as part of the public record, and like there was in the Horsley Witten document, there were some items where they said, "Oh, we would prefer you or recommend you to put a condition on this certain topic." I don't have them memorialized in my mind at the moment, but I'd have to go back to the documents and say, "Okay, if this is related to this waiver, make sure that condition's in there." So I'd like to get to that point where we can do that first stab, and then have a broad outline, and then yes, the next decision say, okay, now that we have the full picture of a draft, and then these are conditions that would affect these waivers, then we can say yes, 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 or if someone had a question, no, or whatever. But I think we're close to that, having that discussion maybe at the next hearing.
Certainly. But just going back to the findings of fact, for an example, if the board were to have a finding that the applicant's offer to provide nitrogen enhanced treatment to in the septic system as mitigation for the decreased setback from 100 feet to 72 feet wetlands to septic system, the board specifically finds that mitigates for the reduced setback. It begins to pave the way to justify and defend the grant of that waiver.
Correct. That's a perfect example of what we were just talking about, as far as, we can line up any of those conditions with the document and the waiver list. Then, it makes it a lot easier for us to, as a board, to go down and one by one say yes, 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 or let's have a discussion on this one particularly. But I think it's more efficient if we have that sort of document together.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Reed, I just am reviewing the waivers requested. I have a 2009 copy of the bylaws.
Broke up, Brad.
Just the copy of the highlight paragraphs that apply to the waivers being requested from the bylaws.
You broke up on I didn't hear that, Brad. Could you repeat what your concern is?
Yeah, well, no, it's not a concern. It's kind of a request for clarification.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be helpful if we could, maybe get a copy. My copy of bylaws is pretty old. It's 2009, so I don't have a current copy of the bylaws, particularly where it applies to the wetlands bylaw of the town. So it would be kind of nice if we could at least highlight the paragraphs that apply directly to the waivers requested. That's all.
Yes. Eric, can you pull that for Brad?
Of course. I didn't realize that some of the board members didn't have the most recent copy. So what I'll do is I'll send the entire board an updated PDF as well as a link to the bylaws online.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So with that, then why don't we look toward a date? So Erica, because some of it's going to fall on you to start the draft document, to pull some of this together, and you know, as Joe recommended or offered, he is certainly make himself available to help with that, and I'll be available to help too, as sort of any of the board members. When do you think procedurally you'd have, or practically have, something so we could say, okay, for the next meeting date of X, we could potentially have some type of document that we could facilitate that walkthrough of the waivers?
Sure. I would seek, or it would be helpful for me if we could meet in another month rather than in 2 weeks, just because I am taking the week of Labor Day off. So it will take me some time to get that draft completed, and then to have you and Joe review it. So my recommendation, or what I would desire, is that, you know, we could meet in another month. I know typically towards the end of the hearing process, we tend to meet in 2 weeks increments versus a month, but I just think in this instance, I would need that month.
Okay. So at a calendar wise, do you have a calendar in front of you where you could propose a date?
Sure.
Like what's the Tuesday of sometimes toward the third week of September or something like that, or second or third week of September.
Sure. So if we're looking at Tuesdays, it could be the fourth Tuesday. There's 5 Tuesdays in September. So September 22nd is the fourth Tuesday, and then September 29th is the 5th Tuesday. So maybe the 22nd.
Yeah, the 29th pushes it pretty close, because then by October 5th we have to turn around, and you know. So I'd like to have a little leeway where if we had to schedule a couple meetings, we still have time to schedule.
22nd works for me.
Okay.
And understand, Mr. Chairman, you have you have to close the hearing by October 5th. You then have 40 days after that to render the decision. So you could actually meet after you close the hearing to further deliberate and refine the decision. I think the important point is on the 22nd, that you get the high points out and give the opportunity for the applicant to react.
Correct, right. And I think that's great clarification, because but then if we had some follow-up work from that, we still have time to do by the October 5th deadline of the 180 days to close it. And then, as I say, we could then do the finalized decision drafting process and deliberations.
Mr. Chairman, the 22nd works fine for us, and we will certainly agree to help Mr. Pesnoa and Erica any way we can. If they need any information from us, or if we can help in any way, we're available to do that.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Attorney DeSedens. So, so that would be a 6 o'clock start time. Is that where as normal?
Great.
I guess it depends on whether we're doing Zoom or not.
Well, let's assume we are, because I'm not aware that they've changed, that it's changing at any time soon. Are you aware of any developments, Erica?
I am not, no. I think I'm more than likely, I think it's going to be by Zoom.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, okay. So, we have a motion to continue the hearing until October 22nd at 6 p.m. via Zoom.
September 22nd.
Right,
Go ahead.
Tuesday, that's it.
I will motion
October.
to resume the meeting on September 22nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
Roll call, Andy, or excuse me, roll call, Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes.
and Kay Stoner.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll continue this hearing until September 22nd, Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Very
Great.
good. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to working with you on the 22nd.
Yeah, thanks for your assistance, and thanks Seth and Joe. Appreciate it.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Mhm. Okay, so I think we had one other item for us as a board is just Erica had included some minutes at the last, throughout the last couple weeks for review tonight. So do you want to bring those up, Erica?
Sure. Gerard, I will call up your PDF that you sent today, just because I know you did have one edit.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay, here we go. I think it was just an and. I may have forgotten an and or something. I think you highlighted it.
Yeah, it was highlighted in yellow, but yeah.
Here. Yep.
Yeah, so, but I read through it, I compared to whatever, I do take some notes during these meetings, and it seemed like you caught all the highlights, so I'm in favor of accepting the minutes. Anyone else have any feedback on the minutes? Certainly chime in.
Yeah, no, they were fine. I read them. They were fine with me.
Yeah, I looked at them. They're good.
All right. And Stoner, you always have a good critical eye too. Are they good for you? Thumbs up?
Yeah, it's good for me. Yeah.
All right, perfect. And did Andy already opine, or is he? He's on mute.
Okay by me.
Okay. So, Erica, you need a motion to approve the minutes?
Correct.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Okay.
Second?
Second by Kay. Okay, perfect. So roll call, Erica.
Gerard Ahern,
Approve? Yes.
Ryan Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kistitz,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes.
and Kay Stoner.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So that's taken care of. So we just need a motion to adjourn the hearing for tonight?
Correct. Yep, sounds good.
Sounds good. All right. So move then, a motion to adjourn.
I will move that.
Okay.
All right, all in
Roll.
favor, Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Ryan Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kistitz,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes.
and Kay Stoner.
Yes.
That's
All
perfect.
right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Look
Thank
to
Good night.
your draft.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.